Hey, it's Kevin with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by two guests, two CEOs. So we got two big guys today. And we're going to be talking a little bit about a partnership between enVista and GreyOrange. And I'm going to be joined by Jim Barnes, who is the CEO at enVista, and Akash Gupta, who is the co-founder and CEO at GreyOrange. And they've recently partnered together. And we're going to learn about that partnership, but we're also going to learn a little bit about their thoughts on the industry and why they did this partnership as well. So, Akash and Jim, welcome to the show. How are you both today?
Good, good. Thanks for having us here.
Yeah, very well. Thanks, Kevin, for the invitation and the opportunity to speak with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to get you both on. And, sometimes we get people on and we talk about these partnerships, but sometimes it's only from one side. So I think this is great that we have both sides here to talk about this and learn a little bit about how this came together and ultimately the goal and the solution here for those users in the warehouse and operations world. So let's kick it off here and learn a little bit more about enVista and GreyOrange for people that maybe are not familiar. Akash, you want to start? Tell us a little bit about GreyOrange, and you're the co-founders too. So maybe you could give us a little insight as to why you started the company as well.
So GreyOrange basically does AI orchestration or warehouse orchestration within the four walls of the warehouse. We also do AI orchestration within the four walls of the store. What does it mean is that while there are a bunch of technologies in the warehouse and you can get a bunch of robotic uptime, we basically ensure that all these technologies work in sync and all the inventory remains in sync and likes of that, so that we can kind of orchestrate robots, automation, people together to get fulfillment outcomes in the warehouse. We started 12 years back. The thought process always was that while there was kind of automation coming in the warehouse, you need that physical automation, but you also need a lot of digital decision-making automation in the warehouses as well. So from GreyOrange perspective, we were focused on combining these automations together so that retailers and 3PLs of the world can basically leverage this technology to get real outcomes in the warehouse.
Mm, very interesting. Yeah, yeah, and I think that the decision making is certainly a key aspect, right? To be able to make sure that things are where they need to be at the right time. So Jim, how about on your side? Tell us a little bit about enVista for those that are not familiar.
Yeah, so enVista, we're a 25-year-old firm. We do really two major things. We actually are a supply chain consulting and firm up front. So about 125 consultants up front designing supply chains, along with doing facility designs, which we refer to as strategic master designs for any type of organization. It could be CPG, wholesale retailers, distributors, and even manufacturers. And then the second part of the organization is that we are a systems integrator. What makes us different, though, was that we're not an OEM, right? We are agnostic about the equipment that we select. We don't really care about the subsystems. It's just finding the right system to actually get to a client's desired outcomes. So if it's operational throughput, if it's cost containment, cost reduction, growth rate, we're very much of a data-driven organization using data to drive outcomes. And the equipment we use, we don't really care about, right? We've kind of, lack of better terms, Kevin, we've kind of diminished the importance of the systems itself, as long as they actually meet feeds and speeds. And where Akash and team come in is with their
Mm.
software called GreyMatter, right? Which is that orchestration and what we call interoperability. So we can talk more about it, but that's really kind of a background of enVista.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I love that it's data driven, as you said. And I think that's such a key aspect to making the right decisions, right? And being able to put in the right solutions to do that for the operation. As we see, operations have many different nuances and things happening, different types of product, different types of setups, facilities, and all these different things. So you're both in the CEO seat, right? So focused on warehousing and fulfillment and distribution, trying to solve problems for those end users to be able to perform better, be able to serve their customers better, be able to just increase their business and grow that operation. So I'm curious, before we dive into how this partnership came about, I'm curious what your perspectives, the both of your perspectives, are on the industry as a whole right now, particularly when it comes to the technology landscape. So Jim, you wanna start? You wanna answer first?
Yeah, I'll start. So I think it's based upon what's happening from a macroeconomic trend, right? Labor shortages, labor increase in costs in terms of organizations trying to actually meet the needs of demand, right? That demand could be a store demand, that demand could be consumer demand if you're e-commerce centric or if you're omni-channel centric. And the challenges are today is that manual operations are just difficult to compete. And so as people look to, and CEOs and chief supply chain officers look to compete, they're looking for ways to drive that cost per unit, both fixed and variable costs, to the lowest possible point, right? So they can actually improve their gross margins in their shareholder value or shareholder equity. Now, with all that said, right, what you're seeing is you're seeing a propensity to move from manual operations where I'm simply picking to a pallet or picking to a cart to more highly automated facilities that have different subsystems, specifically in terms of shuttles or GTP or autonomous robots or cobots. And so that complexity, right, that you're starting to see requires the likes, and why the relationship we have with Akash and his team is that orchestration and that interoperability to make all those subsystems work in harmony, right, and be sequenced to get to an outcome. And so when we look at designing facilities for organizations, we're specifically focused on SLAs, service level agreements. So when does a truck need to leave if it's a parcel FedEx truck? When does the actual carrier need to show up and leave to ensure all the demand, and I say demand, order demand, right, can be met to hit an SLA, so you're not impacting service
Mm,
to your customers. So that's kind of how we think about it. And as I said, to kind of summarize, Kevin, this macroeconomic to move from more manual operations where I've got labor shortages and it's unpredictable to now a machine that wakes up and works 24/7, right? It's not reliant on people anymore. And that provides complexity in these
mm.
distribution center environments. And that's ultimately what, Akash and I are trying to solve for our clients.
Interesting. Yeah, and I think that it's very interesting. You talked about the interoperability there, and we'll dig more into that in this partnership. But I think it's really important to note that, because we see more solutions in the market, right? There's more solutions in operations from different providers, and how are they going to interact and communicate together, just like human workers would do, right? But shifting that over to the machine, like as you said, that it reduces that downtime and any potential disruptions or human errors that we know can happen in the warehouse, right? So Akash, what's your view on the current kind of technology landscape in the warehouse industry?
Yeah, I think just adding to some of those things, Jim mentioned a couple of other areas. For example, omni-channel is starting to become, a big trend within warehousing. I think people are starting to kind of, when 5 years back, everybody was thinking about, okay, e-commerce is separate and retail distribution is separate, and likes of that. I think today, from just trend perspective, there's enough happening where people are building omni-channel warehouses. People are also kind of thinking about how do they do more and more ship from stores, so your distribution, your fulfillment is all kind of coming together, which of course needs a lot more intelligence in the warehouse, because you're handling two complete parallel channels within the warehouse. You are kind of fulfilling both the channels from same inventory. You want to kind of
Mm,
manage your fulfillment SLAs, but distribution to store SLAs, as well, how to balance between them and likes of that. So that's another kind of trend, and complexity that we are seeing in the warehouses that needs to be solved for. And then, of course, SLAs, are becoming tighter and tighter. I think there are warehouses we run where, your order to ship time literally needs to be 2 hours, right? So for every single
mm,
single order. So yeah, I think SLAs and the demand for steeper SLAs is continuously growing. And that's where I think a lot of these technology comes into the place. And also I think there's a lot of I would say need for figuring out how do you set up technology, how do you orchestrate technology, how you design and leverage right technology, right? There's, I would say a fair bit of noise out there. If you go out, you would see like,
Mm,
I would say 40 different technologies that can be, leveraged. But being able to design a solution with the right technology for the right inventory characteristics, order characteristics, operation characteristics become really, really important. And then being able to, I would say, operate on that design day to day so that you can get the right outcomes, become really, really important. And that's where kind of GreyOrange and enVista can really kind of come together of being able to design
mm,
something in a data-driven way, in a agnostic way, and then from GreyMatter perspective, being able to operate it intelligently every single day in real time.
mm. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, it's a great segue there. I mean, how you both kind of came together. So tell us a little bit about how did this partnership come about? And I don't know who wants to take that first. Who sparked the first idea here of partnering?
I
Yeah,
think
go
we've
for
known
it,
each
Jim. You
other.
can start it.
Yeah, no. I mean, Akash and I've known each other for quite some time in the industry, right? And we've come to the same conclusion, but I think at different points. And so let me just kind of elaborate on that, right?
Mm,
So as a systems integrator, I mean, today, right, we will select and design agnostic equipment. So you can pick your poison from GTP systems to cross belt sorters to shoe sorters to conveyance to collaborative robots, right, to AGVs, AMRs, and we've done about everything under the sun. And we do today at enVista have our own what we call warehouse control software, which is kind of like I would call it level one type
mm,
technology, right, which is controlling and communicating to PLCs that we will actually use to control machines. But it's very, very clear to me that the real unlock, and we touched about this, is really around orchestration. And most warehouse
mm,
management systems do not really have a strong orchestration sequencing type technology that evaluates how work gets done and when work gets done, right? Most warehouse management systems in the space are really nothing more than a tasking engine. I've got a body of work, I give it to a bunch of people, and they go execute task. But there isn't anything dynamic about, hey, what happens when I'm behind an SLA or ahead of an SLA? How do I reshift and reprioritize the work in the facility? Um, and then you add on the complexity of interoperability. Let's say I've got two different type of robotic manufacturers that I'm working with. They don't communicate with each other, right? I mean, robot A doesn't communicate with robot B. I
mm,
mean, yeah, I've got different robotic control software, but I need something that can speak to both of them simultaneously to make sure they don't run into each other. And so when we were starting to look at evaluating different technologies, I'm like, look, let me reach out to Akash. I think he solved this business problem. He's doing it today with some large retailers and distributors.
mm,
And we just started thinking about how do we actually leverage the gray matter technology to go solve some of these orchestration and interoperability situations that we have, right, with some of our customers, and then adding our technology onto it just to even make it better. And so, again, taking that data-driven approach that just goes from theory to execution is really kind of where the magic happens, and quite frankly, why we're leveraging Akash's software.
mm. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's very interesting there. So I'm curious, right? Because this is often a question, right? Like, I guess the buy versus build and in a sense, or I guess in this scenario, the partner versus build, right? So why partner with Akash and use GreyMatter versus like, taking your existing software to the next level or creating something new?
Yeah, I mean it's because the fact that when we did our own due diligence of buy versus build, and we look at the universe of providers in this orchestration and interoperability word. I use the word warehouse optimization system, warehouse orchestration systems, like WOS is kind of the new term that we're using to describe this. Most of the
Mm,
providers that are out there are 2 to 3 years old, and they've got decent architecture, but they haven't actually been proven. And when we're talking about reducing risk for our clients, I wanted a proven partner. And Akash has been doing this for 12 years, right? He actually has all the actual warts or kind of off the technology, right? This isn't something that you just go build in 2 years and scale. He has some large clients, H&M, Walmart as an example, to name a few, that he's proved this out, right? So he's got the hard knocks, right? He actually has the bruises, that he's gone through years of development. And honestly, it comes down to cost, Kevin. I mean, I won't tell
mm.
tell you what Akash has put into the piece of software, but it's in the millions of dollars, right? It's in
I'm sure.
millions of
Yeah.
dollars of investment, right? And so when you start looking at do you buy versus build, and then also drive enterprise value for any business, his business and my business, we made the decision it was just better to actually partner, and then
Mm.
adapt his technology and build around it versus starting from ground zero. That's where the relationship came from and why.
Interesting, interesting. Very insightful there too on the decision making process. So I guess Akash, tell us a little bit about the. We kind of talked a little bit about it here, but tell us more about the GreyMatter software and how it comes into play in this partnership.
Yeah, sure. I think from GreyMatter software perspective, I think we should think about that in like three or four layers. From overall perspective, the bottommost layer is all about, what we call as kind of agent orchestration, and you can think about
Mm,
agents as any, I would say, devices in the warehouse, right? We think about this as kind of six different device classes, which are altogether called agents. For example, AMR is a device class, robotic arm is a device class, a drone is a device class, a PLC is a device class. So think about these as kind of device classes, and the bottommost layer for GreyMatter is all about being able to interoperate these device classes and also being able to kind of orchestrate them correctly. And when I decode orchestration, it's all about, and Jim talked about it, is what to do, when to do, and which agent should do it, right? At any point of time, there are a bunch of tasks in a warehouse. You really need to kind of take real-time decisions of what, when, and who, in terms of what's happening in the warehouse, and continuously kind of take that feedback so that you can keep on adapting to what's happening in the warehouse, and not just have one static way of doing things. So basically, the bottommost layer is all about kind of managing and orchestrating these agents. Now, when you go on the upper layer, a lot of these technologies need a certain way of how inventory is stored, how orders are, processed, and what sequence orders
mm,
are processed, and likes of that. So second layer of GreyMatter is all around inventory and order orchestration, just to make sure that way the inventory is stored and way the orders are getting processed, it's is conducive to that particular type of agent, right? When you're doing a rack to person system, that needs to be done differently. When you're doing a assist kind of a system, it needs to be done differently. When you're doing a tote to person system, done differently. So basically, the second layer does that. The third layer is all about orchestrating within the processes. Now, of course, there is a, forward area or picking process in the warehouse. There's inbound, there's reserve, there's packing, there is outbound management and likes of that, right? So that layer basically does orchestrating within these processes. So let's say, you get a consignment of these orders need to be at these dock doors by 5 p.m. Right now, that's the basically overall task that needs to be done. The third layer of GreyMatter basically breaks it down, saying, okay, replenishment to forward area needs to happen by 10 a.m. The picking needs to happen by 1 p.m. The packing needs to happen by 2 p.m. Sorting needs to happen by 3 p.m. so that prioritization happens and everything is at dock door by 5 p.m. So basically, being able to take this task and at the right time orchestrate it correctly and continuously to take the feedback. Like, let's say, oh, replenishment is running behind, so these tasks need to be prioritized first because they need more time in picking and all of that aspects. And the fourth layer is all about visualization, analytics, AI, and being able to kind of continuously visualize it, learn through it, and likes of that. So you can think about GreyMatter in these four layers. today we support close to 20, I would say, technologies from 8 to 9
Mm,
automation robotic vendors. We go from a scale of running single agent 20 bot warehouse to like 5 agent 1,000 bot warehouse and likes of that. So pretty much going at a scale, at a smaller scale to a much larger scale, doing various applications, like whether it is retail distribution, whether it is working with CPG companies for their wholesale and distribution, or e-commerce companies for their fulfillment, or kind of different retailers for omni-channel, or all those applications basically are supported on GreyMatter today.
mm. Interesting, and I love the breakdown there too of kind of how the software works in these different layers. And I think make it sound very simple that like, oh, these pallets need to be at the dock door at 5 p.m., right? But there's so many other orders and things going on that in the operation that orchestration becomes very critical to be able to make sure that those things actually are happening on time, right? And you talk about some of the big retailers and Jim mentioned, some of the customers you have. Obviously, they have very tight time constraints, very strict time constraints to be able to follow. To that orchestration is very critical to make that happen, and very hard to do that if it's just the human trying to figure it out and make it happen, right? So very interesting there. So this partnership has resulted in something called enMotion, right, Jim? So tell us a little bit about enMotion and how it solves some of the challenges that warehouses are facing today, Jim.
Yeah, I think of enMotion as really as a platform, right? But the genesis and the architecture of this platform resides on Akash's GreyMatter piece of technology. And then what we're doing is obviously writing different integrations to different subsystems. So, but the core of enMotion really is this warehouse orchestration interoperability technology that GreyOrange, which is GreyMatter. So we've just rebranded it as enMotion, and then our ability to add onto additional control software that we own and we built internally as our IP onto it to actually communicate to these different disparate subsystems. So we're going to market as enMotion, meaning that really, if you think about a distribution center environment that happens to be either distribution centric or retail centric, we're always in motion. There's always something happening, and then using AI and predictive analytics to determine how to sequence work, using again Akasha software to actually drive to that result. And so it's part branding, part go to market as we look at creating differentiation for ourselves, Kevin, in the market. But the genesis,
Mhm.
the backbone of this is really sitting on the GreyMatter technology. And then what we're doing is we're putting for lack of better terms, we're putting wrappers around it, right, to drive additional IP to help accelerate our growth and help accelerate our differentiation with the cautious help.
Got it. Okay, and I think I saw in the announcement it's being put on two robotic solutions, right? Two pallet movers. So tell us a little bit about those robotic solutions and I guess the hardware part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, so the first thing that we've gone to market with is that we have an OEM provider today on the full case pick to pallet, which is both single and double deep. And the reason why is because when you look at a lot of manual operations, especially brownfield sites, they're already using single deep or double deep case picking to pallet. And so how do we actually drive efficiencies using cobots today in those types of designs without actually having to pull out, all the racking and start over? And so this is a really easy way for our customers and even prospects to move into robotics along with the GreyMatter software to drive those efficiencies. So again, the first is a single deep and a double deep case pick, really kind of focused around automotive, which we're doing a lot of full case pick to pallet type operations, and also wholesale and retail grocery, where you're doing a lot of full case pick to pallet. So instead of being on a double deep or single deep rider and walking and then doing selection, and actually, interesting enough, the selection part of this process is pretty simple. Where you pick up a lot of time is where to actually where to place the case on the pallet. And so the fact that we actually direct the actual user where to actually place the case onto the pallet and in what sequence, right, to build the right tie high is where you start to drive efficiencies. And more importantly, you probably know this, is that most of these warehouses, let's say it's a 500,000 square foot warehouse and you've got 100 people picking, over multiple shifts, we can reduce the amount of labor required by taking out a lot of the travel time, right? And so we've seen between 25 to
Mm.
30% increase in productivity by just taking out people moving manually on a rider from, let's say, the end of a pick to a staging location. We can do that automatically with the cobot, right? I
Right.
don't need you to ride. And so if you think about it, right, we're driving efficiencies, one, through the fact that the actual cobot is moving from point A to point B without a person on it, and then we're driving efficiencies by helping selectors select cases onto pallets and build them, especially when you have a high turnover, right? We have a particular grocery client that has a lot of turnover. And it's not difficult for you to sit there and say, well, go pick two cases and put on the pallet. That's the easy part. The problem is, where do you place it, right? How do you sequence it so when you start to build a 70 or 85 cube pallet, you're building it in the right orchestration? And that's quite frankly where we're leveraging some of the GreyMatter technology to help us build those pallets effectively and efficiently.
Mm. Very interesting. Yeah, and I think a very interesting initial use case, right, to apply it to, and so one of the things I think that is in the industry is certainly there's been these like barriers of entry into robotics and automation, right? Whether it's from just an understanding perspective, a learning curve, or from a cost perspective, but this is going on a RaaS model, right? A robotics as a service model. So tell us a little bit about kind of how this solution is helping to lower that barrier of entry a little bit.
Well, and I'd like to get Akash's input on this as well. But from our perspective, look, and I'm being kind of selfish about it, to be honest with you. It's a pretty easy decision. I mean, our ability to go into a client and to do a proof of concept, which we don't charge for, right, is very, very quick. We can literally have a cobot
Mm.
on site within 4 to 5 weeks. We can take a particular part of a warehouse. We don't even need to jump on their Wi-Fi. We can do this over all Bluetooth. We can take orders from an Excel spreadsheet and put it into the GreyMatter software, run it, and just to start to actually just do proof of concepting, try it, right? Is it perfect the first time? No, but it doesn't take us long to actually tweak it, to actually drive the actual cobot in the right sequence or to get the outcome. So we can take two or three aisles, right, just to prove it out. And
Mm.
so we're trying to minimize the barrier to entry by saying, look, there really isn't any cost up front to you, Mr. Customer, along with the fact that we're just not going to tell you, we're actually going to show you. And so again, if we can show versus just tell, we can drive efficiencies and performance, and they can actually see it and look at it happening real time, then we think these are ways to actually reduce that cost of barrier, right, and that resistance to try something.
Mm.
So we're trying to remove that resistance to just try it.
Interesting, interesting. And Akash, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the job that Jim and I have from our companies is to make it super easy for the customer, right? At the end of the day, we want to make sure that from design perspective and from the software perspective, we take all the complexity and present it in the most simple way to the customer, right?
Mm.
I think we are the experts here, so our job is literally to kind of absorb all the complexity and kind of present something which is very simple, very malleable, very quick for the customers. And that's pretty much what this partner is focused about. That how do we kind of take all the technical complexity from the customer's hand and kind of absorb it within our organizations, and make sure that the applications like retail distribution or fulfillment or e-commerce or omni-channel are presented in a very simple way to our customers, and are demonstrated in a very quick and simple way to our customers, so that they don't need to deal with technology selection, they don't need to deal with technology adaptation, they don't need to deal with the optimizations and all of that. All of that is built behind the scenes when enVista and GreyOrange is working together.
Mm. Interesting. Yeah, yeah. And I think you said the word kind of making it simple in there, right? And I think that's really important, right? For that customer or potential customer to understand that we can, simply kind of put this in and see how it works. Like you said there, Jim, being able to show them proof of concept without any real upfront costs and just show them that it works, right? And then having that simplicity that it is accomplishing what you want it to accomplish, and the simplicity to work with it out as well, I think goes even further to help them, I guess, get more comfortable, like going forward with the project, right, and adopting it. So I think that this gets payback within 18 months of operation with like 100% ROI expectation. That's pretty good. Tell us a little bit about that.
I think there's different ROIs, right? In the day, what we will do, and I'll talk about the ROI here in a second, but don't talk about the process, right? Which is like, look, we'll take data up front. We'll take order data, line data, SKU data, item master data, in terms of dim weights, right? We will build and run it through our basically design algorithms and build a digital twin. And once we build that digital twin, we can at least say, at least on paper, right, here's what you're doing today, and this is what you can be doing if you move in this direction. The next step, obviously, is once we build a digital twin, we will do that proof of concept right within the actual four walls to actually go prove it out. So now you're taking theory and you're taking it to practice. And that's where the real magic happens, because people start to see, wow, this isn't just theoretical that some industrial engineer or operations research data scientist created. Like, this is like real. I can see it happening, especially when you're speaking to real operators
Mm.
that have a lot of practical experience, right? They're always, I think, very, very risk avoidant. So the more we can show them, the better. But the return on investments really can be anywhere between 12 months to 2 years. And again, a lot of it is just driven around the efficiencies that we pick up, either on selection times or travel reduction rates, or even equipment. The more in a RaaS model, just be completely transparent, the more the machine runs, because you're taking that cost and spreading it over a longer time period of hours, even the higher
Mm.
payback. So we get great paybacks within an 8-hour shift. You do it within a 2-hour shift, then the paybacks actually start to increase even more significantly, because the cost of that particular unit, right? And let's say this particular cobot signal deep selection is basically a fixed cost, right, per month. So the more it works, obviously, the more it pays back faster, right? And
Mm.
so if you're doing more than a two shifts, or you're working 6 days a week, the more the machine is working, obviously the reduction and the increase in payback.
Mm. Interesting. Yeah, yeah, and I think that's even goes even further, right, to lower that barrier of entry too, because it's very clear. I mean, it's pretty good to see that quick kind of return in most scenarios, and I think that's really good. So now, if we look towards the future of this partnership and what it could potentially be, right, Jim? You mentioned that these were just the kind of two use cases you started out with, these two different robotic solutions. But how does this expand, and how does this go further? Akash, what are your thoughts first?
Yeah, no, I think I would say there are tens of solutions that can be built. There are multiple, I would say, types of warehouses. There are multiple problems within a single warehouse. There's a lot happening in the micro fulfillment space. There's a lot happening in the back of the store space. There's a lot happening in the omni-channel space and likes of that. So I think it's just a starting point to kind of get to a couple of solutions and start kind of building stronger and stronger partnership. And I think as we move forward, I'm pretty sure there would be also a lot of exchange of ideas. GreyMatter is a platform you can build more newer solutions on that very, very quickly. And with Jim's team's expertise on kind of understanding the warehouses for 25 years, being very deep understanding of how these processes work, where are the bottlenecks and likes of that, and we're already seeing a lot of flow of ideas between two teams to be able to kind of I would say configure GreyMatter to kind of provide more and more different solutions and more optimized solutions, and also even on the aspects of just pure decision making of kind of where to place things and how to place things and where to store things and how to kind of optimize all of that are again kind of extensions that we are already kind of thinking of. So yeah, I think given the combination of technology orchestration expertise and kind of deep warehouse understanding, I
Mm.
think these two things coming together can really kind of build a very long-term relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jim, what are your thoughts there on the future of this partnership?
No, I mean, we're doing this because I think, quite frankly, between Akash and I, I'm going to call it world domination, right? In terms of fulfillment, I mean this sincerely, right? The only thing that's holding us back isn't innovation, creativity, or even the software with the warehouse orchestration. It's now about just different machines, right? What can different machines do that can drive efficiencies and effectiveness within the warehouse? So if you look at, our partnerships today on the GTP side and the shuttles and AMRs, like I said, we're kind of relegating them to just machines. I hate to say that they're dumb, but they're just dumb machines, right? They just have to meet. They actually just have feeds and speeds,
Mm.
and mechanically they have to be sound so they don't wear out, right? And they don't cost a lot of money to replace them, or they've got longer yields, right? So I'm not replacing motors and belts and drives and servo motors, right?
Mm.
And so I'm always worried about the maintenance side of the machine as well. You fix that. I mean, the reality is the brains of what we're doing really resides within gray matter. And so the possibilities are really endless for us. And I'm not going in with a pre-prescribed answer, like a lot of times my competition are doing, because they either have a specific machine they want to sell, and that's all
Mm.
they do. Our secret sauce is being objective, right? Based upon data, and really selecting the best of, and then putting it all together using gray matter. And that's really a powerful thing when you can walk into a client and say, look, I'm outcome focused. What's the SLA? What's the throughput? What's your growth? What's your cost containment, cost control strategies? How do I drive more value by reducing cost per unit or cost per line? Reducing your labor so you're less dependent upon labor where you've got labor shortages in a particular market, and then being able to be really creative and innovative and not being held back, right, by a piece of software. And so I think we've overcome that now with the relationship with Akash and GreyOrange and GreyMatter. And now it's just a matter of designing some really really cool facilities that get to those outcomes, Kevin. It's pretty powerful. It really is.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I love that you're saying that, there's a lot of different options and opportunities and you're leaving yourself open to that, right? To see like where can this go? Because I think, a lot of times too, I mean, there's unique use cases that come up, I'm sure that you see, right? And how can we solve for that? And like, oh, well, we put these pieces together and now how do we put them together in a little different way to now solve this one too as well, which I think is really good to hear and see. So very interesting to learn from you both here today on the podcast about the partnership and how it came about and what it all means. So if people want to learn more about GreyOrange, what's the best way to do that, Akash?
I think the best way is to kind of go to the website gearorange.com or just write to us. I think we love to talk to our customers, partners. Kind of we also kind of do a automation day every month. So we pick up a
Mm.
site or our own customer experience zone and kind of bring people in there, let them I would say touch and see and observe what happens and what gray matter does and what problems we solve. So,
Oh.
we come in one of those automation days. It's happening every single month.
Oh wow, I love that. I gotta find my invite to that. Definitely. And Jim, what about you? What's the best way to learn more about enVista and particularly enMotion?
Yes, I mean, same thing, right? Folks listen to the podcast can go out to envistacorp.com. They can do an intake form, and we're pretty good with our business development and marketing team reaching back within 24 hours, if not less. And they can always reach out to me directly as well. jbarnes at envistacorp.com. I return phone calls and emails in about 24 hours, if not less. Akash and I are right along as CEOs. I'm not going to say we're on 24/7, but I think he was in Amsterdam last week, and we were texting at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm in San Francisco, or if I'm in Australia. So we're pretty accessible, and I think you can tell that we're very passionate about what we do, and that passion wears off onto our teams
Yeah.
because we like solving problems for our clients, right? We like to get to outcomes. I think the biggest, just to kind of conclude from my perspective, Kevin, it's okay. I think the biggest challenge that Akash and I have is, as thought leaders, really educating the market, right? This is kind of a paradigm shift. Traditional old school warehouse management, automation that works in isolation, doesn't talk to each other, to really determining how to put and using AI and predictive analytics, and specifically around machine learning type algorithms to really drive efficiencies. And so there is a learning curve that we're trying to just teach and educate,
Mm.
right? But the good thing is we've got proof points, right? We can take prospects and clients to sites that we've both done to actually see it. So it's just not theoretical. We've actually put this into practice, and it's happening real time. So, but I think
Mm.
that our biggest challenge is just getting people to think differently, because this is a 40-year-old industry in terms of warehouse management and automation. And we're coming at it from a different
Yeah.
perspective, right? We're coming at it from, hey, you're no longer limited about how to get work done. We'll actually help you sequence that work and get it out the door. And so there's some education and learning that we're trying to accomplish. And, we're going actually on a road show. Akash and I go see some prospects to just try to help them understand like what's possible. So, um,
Mm.
but I just want to leave you with that, right? There's a lot of education and a lot of knowledge transfer that has to happen.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's great that you're getting out there and being able to understand the challenges, and then also be able to explain and educate, as you said, people on what the potential solutions could be, or how you could work together to be able to accomplish those. So really fantastic to talk to you both today here on the podcast, and I appreciate your time coming on. And we'll definitely put all the information about GreyOrange and enVista and enMotion and then the partnership at thenewwarehouse.com, as well as in the show notes here. So Jim and Akash, thank you once again for your time on the show today.
Perfect. No, absolutely. Thank you for having us here.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into today's video here on our YouTube channel, The New Warehouse Podcast, and I appreciate you tuning in. If you liked what you saw, make sure you subscribe to our channel, and if you like this video in particular, make sure you like it as well. And if you want to get this great t-shirt that you see in the video behind me, Warehouses Are Sexy, head to warehousesAreSexy.com and get your own.